Rebel Inc. bringing us in. And you know what? That Rebel Inc. is freaking rocking it, man. They are actually up for some magazine Metal Album of the Year. They are gaining traction. I've seen them on bills with bands that I like that, you know, are big in the metal world. So congratulations for them to breaking through to somewhat of mainstream success with the message that they have. But we're talking alternative currencies here. And, you know, we spent about the last half hour talking about Bitcoins, but believe it or not, folks, that is not the only option. There's more options out there to get away from the Fed than just cryptocurrencies. And I'm going to want our guests' take on it at some point. But before we do that, let's bring in Wayne Walton. Wayne is up in Summit, or I should say down in Summit County, Colorado, and he is the creator of a usury-free, organic, by the people, of the people, for the people currency called Mountain Hours that, from what I understand, is based on the time that you have as a human being to give, and that's what gives it value. So, Wayne, thank you very much for joining us. It's a revolutionary idea to fight the Fed on this kind of level.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Always a pleasure, man. So just to start off, I mean, I really like a lot of what you talk about, especially with the ideology of you know what hours are and stuff like that. But just to give our audience a quick rundown, what exactly is your definition of what mountain hours are?
Well, let's just back up as to what the definition of money is, because that's where everything falls apart. And you know, when you make money a commodity, immediately you're giving up your sovereignty, and that's really the goal of everybody, regardless of, you know, what your political ideology is or whatever. You want the have-nots to have sovereignty, to have self-determination. That's the overarching goal, is for humanity, or the have-nots, because right now the haves are dominating the have-nots, even though, you know, you can get into that 99%, 1% thing, or however you want to articulate it. But we're talking about usurpation, where you have a tiny minority dominating the masses, and usurpation is based upon usury. But specifically, what is money? Money is not a commodity, it's a contract. It's an IOU that's issued when you can't work out the timing for a barter. So if we both agree that barter is a sovereign exchange between two producers, hypothetically, if you make bread and I make wheat, and we work out a barter, there's no third-party manipulation. It's a completely sovereign exchange. We can sustain life under that system. The problem arises is that you need to have a dance partner, and if we can't work the timing out for that, let's say it's wintertime and I can't harvest any wheat right now, I, as a producer, as a sovereign without subjects, I issue an IOU to you as a private contract that I'm going to deliver wheat upon the harvest for 1 bushel of wheat in exchange for your 1 loaf of bread. That IOU contract is still based upon barter, and it still allows for 3 things. There's no force, there's no fraud in the form of usury, and there's no monopolization of the barter exchange, meaning any producer can issue that IOU contract. So that's what money is. Money isn't the bread or the wheat. Money is the IOU that I issue when I can't deliver the wheat during the wintertime.
So how would you say that definition differs from the traditional kind of Austrian definition of it's just a accepted medium of exchange between two individuals?
Well, typically Austrians define money as a store of value, and it's not a store of value. It's a medium of exchange. So when you make it a store of value, now you're trying to and by the way, I'm not against buying gold and silver. It's just it should never be used as a money system that you're reliant upon, because as soon as you're reliant upon something outside of your control, that means you're dependent upon that entity that controls that particular commodity, irrespective of whether that's gold, silver, Bitcoin, or coconuts. Do you understand? Like this should be this is a sovereignty issue. Alternatively, as me being a sovereign without subjects, right? That's what an anarchist really is looking to be. He's looking to be a sovereign without subjects, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's what an anarchist is. You're self-governing. You are the sovereign, right? So I have a very, a biblical or Christian or it's even Islam or Judaism. I have a spiritual-based concept of money, and they viewed money in the form of false idols, meaning gold, silver, or any commodity as a false idol. We human beings are the real value, and as soon as we make something outside of our control, because the average dude does not have a supercomputer that can mine Bitcoin. So as soon as the same entity that controls the Federal Reserve they're the ones that control the overwhelming computer capacity. So therefore, it's the exact same entity that controls the Fed, controls Bitcoin, controls gold, silver, uranium, diamonds, or any other commodity that you can think of, except for time. So we got to get real serious about we're going to have a revolution, right? We're all agreed on that. We got to have a revolution, right? So if we don't want to be dominated by the elite, we got to stop using things that they control. And the thing that we control is our own time, passions, energy, productivity, and we need to issue money ourselves without paying a fee to do that. Because when you have barter, there's no fee for you to have your barter system. But as soon as you set your money system up to be some sort of commodity, now you have to pay for your money system.
And I agree with everything you're saying. I agree because what I feel you're saying is that every human being inherently has value in and of themselves, and that we're all created equal to in entitlement to our rights, and how we practice them is a value. You know what I mean? So if I am good with my hands and I can produce something that gives me value, that I should be able to trade that for other people's value if they are good at baking or whatever it is. So I get what you're saying, but I think it's a hard pill for people to swallow when you think of it on an ideological level, because when you put the human condition in it, how much inflation does time have? You know what I mean? So how does this kind of idea differ from the traditional kind of economic paradigm that we think of, like inflation, like scarcity and things like that?
Well, that's the other big differentiation that I have. I basically, let's call this usury-free economics. The whole topic of inflation is a red herring, because inflation in Weimar Germany, they were pushing around wheelbarrows of cash, right? They were drowning in too much money. Agree upon that? I hope that's pretty safe to say,
yeah.
Right?
I mean, you can't argue with that, yeah.
Well, yeah, so that's not what we have right now. We are suffering from scarcity. We have too little money. So if we have too little money right now with Federal Reserve notes, on your radio show, are you getting a deluge of donations? Do you have lots of people just throwing money at you because the money's so worthless that they would sooner give it to you for advertising than whatever other things? Like most entities that I'm aware of, they're starving for money. If you don't have money right now under Federal Reserve System, how are you going to have money when it's based upon that something that's even more scarce in the form of gold, silver, or Bitcoin? Does that make any sense?
Well, I get what you're saying. My counter to that would be that the divisibility of and I totally agree with you, because with gold and silver, that has long been taken over by the ruling class. I mean, I remember seeing Ron Paul say in Freedom to Fascism that the Federal Reserve claimed all of our gold as collateral for the dollars they print. So that's gone. Now, with Bitcoin, yeah, the issue with it is that it's not. yet in the manufacturing field, so the people who are business owners cannot pay people with it, so therefore it costs money to get started in Bitcoin, and that is a problem. But what I would disagree, and I would like some clarification, is I don't know if I would say it's necessary that we don't have enough dollars. Because, and I get what you're saying. I don't have enough dollars because, ain't nothing up but the rent. But that is not, I don't think that's a mechanism of the Fed. I think that's a mechanism of the wealth gap, and that, like you mentioned earlier, the 1% and the usurpation that is taking place here.
Well, that's the reality. What's important for everybody to do is recognize that we are lied about absolutely everything. Everything. So when the TV is telling us that they're creating all of this money, why don't we take another a reality check and let's compare what we're being told, that there's all of this money being created, right? I think we agree with that. I think you're a 9/11 truther, as am I. They lie
Absolutely.
about everything, everything. So let's just put up the idea that they're lying about the amount of money in circulation. Because what I always like to say is the symptoms of inflation, Weimar Germany symptoms, is that when you have inflation, that means it's really easy to pay your debts because you have lots and lots of money, right? When you look in your bank account and your wallet, there's lots of money there. It's worthless, but you have lots of it, right?
Okay.
When you go to the store, the shelves are empty because it's better to get rid of your worthless pieces of paper and get the products that are on the shelves. Make sense? That's inflation. Yep. Alternatively, deflation is when we look into our wallet and our bank account and we don't have, it's empty. It's very difficult to pay our debts. And finally, when we go to the shelves are full because we don't have enough money to buy the stuff there. So based upon that, do we have inflation or deflation?
I mean, I hear what you're saying. I don't have money, so symptomatically, you're making the case that we're going through deflation. But that's also, like you said, assuming that the wealth gap isn't as out of control as we are led to believe it is, where 60% of the wealth is in the hands of, like, what is it, 1%, 3%, something like that?
Yeah, it's a massive skewering. But ultimately, when you went to Weimar Germany, the common man had lots and lots of money. They were the common man, the regular everyday man. They were going and they were burning blocks of cash because they had so much money, because that's what inflation is, or hyperinflation. And we don't have that. We have deflation. What we have is what Jefferson is, if we allow private banks, private banks, because Austrians are in favor of private banks. They want to eliminate government, and they want private banks to issue all the money. So Jefferson's quote is, if we allow private banks to issue the public currency, which we have right now, first through inflation, then deflation, we will wake up homeless on the continent our forefathers conquered. So that's what's going on, is we have deflation right now, because in the deflation phase, that's when we default and we can't pay our debts, and they repossess all of our assets.
So I guess the first question that pops into my mind then is, how can we compare Weimar Germany to now, when this is the only time we've ever gone through this cycle of a dying currency, with that currency being the reserve currency of the world?
No, this is the same thing that happened under gold and silver during the 30s. In fact, it happened during the 20s. It happened during the Greatest Depression, which was under a gold standard from shortly after they went off of greenbacks in 1873 to roughly 1890. So they had a depression that lasted about 20 years while on a gold system, because money was extremely scarce. It's deflation. So this is very contrary to what typically Austrians talk about. And what just think of it. We both agree, the bankers or the Rothschilds or Rockefellers, they're the ones that control the planet with the money system, et cetera, right? Well, if they've worked very hard to get the entire planet bankrupt.
Yeah, through artificial scarcity.
To get us in debt and then bankrupt us. Because there's a phrase from the Bible when the borrower is slave to the lender. So when we borrow their money, we automatically lose our sovereignty. So that would happen with a private bank system if you had no government at all. If there's no government, all of the money, generally, it's going to be issued by private banks. So the concept that private banks are going to save us is the idea that, Citibank and Wells Fargo and HSBC, those banks are going to save us. They're the ones that are going to save us because government is enslaving us now, and then the private banks are going to compete in order to save us. Does that make any sense? So the point is that the private banks run the show right now. They buy the government. So again, I'm not an Austrian. The thing that I agree with respect to libertarian stuff is that I agree with the non-aggression principle. I don't want force in any of our systems, so I absolutely agree with that. However, the thinking behind Austrian economics actually lends itself to supporting the private bankers that run the show already. The Fed is a private bank. So by getting rid of the Federal Reserve and having private banks issue all the money, you still have the exact same entity in charge now as when the Fed ran it.
Where I would differ is that I personally think that if we're going to go through abolishment, right? If we're going to abolish the government, then it stands to reason that we need to abolish everybody who has become criminally wealthy or criminally powerful through their relationship with the government. So that would include those same private banking entities that benefited so much from a violent relationship with the government. So I think that they would have to go down. And then I would also have to say that I don't think you can definitively say that private banks would be issuing the currency, or at the very least that they would be alone in issuing the currency, because look at what's happening now. We have so much, we have illegal tender laws. We have absolute violence forcing us to use the dollars, and yet Bitcoins are still expanding. So I think it's more about what people want to call money. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm sure there's cultures out there that have used seashells as money. It's just whatever people will want to. So maybe some people will say, hey, I kind of have trust in this bank. They have a good credit history. They have good insurance. Let's allow them to enter the service of issuing low interest rates money to the towns that will trade. Or some people say, well, hey, I like Bitcoin. I don't know what's going to issue the money.
Okay, well let's get into that. Is the next? We're talking now about the. I'm saying this is another lie of Austrian economics. Is the whole idea of a competing currency in a free market? I want to expose that as being a lie, and here's the reason. Let's play pretend. All right. There's a great quote by Einstein that says imagination is more powerful than knowledge. So let's pretend that Austrians have their way. We've abolished all governments, and I'm a voluntarist, so I don't really have a dog in that hunt. I don't really care. So we've abolished all governments. The Federal Reserve is gone. The United States government is gone. There's no borders. We live under an anarchy-based system, right? Now, let's go through the normal expenses that you have right now. So you have utilities and bank loans. Well, let's say you want to buy a house. All right, so you have utilities and you want to get a home loan. and gas.
Okay.
All right. And let's say that, there's 100 competing currencies. Well, I'm the guy, the same entity that ran the show before, they're the ones that control and own all of the land. The bankers own the majority of the land right now.
Okay, but if we are going to go in that scenario, after abolishment, it stands to reason that they are in jail or something, right? Like they've been found criminally accountable, and that wealth that they, in the form of land, in the form of commodities, whatever, was found to have been through, whether it's grand indictments, courts, or whatever, criminal charges have been found to have gotten through fraud, force, and coercion, and their assets are frozen and then somehow liquidated into the free market.
Well, that's a different subject, because the points I'm making is that even under a free market right now is that banks own all of the land. They own, let's say it's 99% of the land on the planet.
Yeah.
Private entities do. So even though you no longer have a government, these entities, private monopolies, still exist. They still have a private monopoly over petroleum. They have a private monopoly over diamonds called De Beers. There's still a private monopoly over gold and silver. It's analogous to, I have gasoline in my car, but that doesn't mean that I control the petroleum industry. Because I have some gold and silver doesn't mean I control the gold and silver industry. And if I own some Bitcoin doesn't mean that I control the mining and issuance of Bitcoin. The elite control those things. So in order for me to pay for my utilities, even though there's 100 different currencies out there, the same power that controls the utilities, they're also going to decide which currency that they're going to be willing to accept for their utilities.
Okay, yeah, I understand that. It's within their nature to maintain and grow where possible their power and your acquiescence.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. And since they own the land, they would also offer loans and then still require payment on those loans in the currencies that they control, not the currency that we can issue ourselves. They're going to require the currencies that they control, meaning gold, silver, Bitcoins, and any other sort of commodity that's controlled by the elite.
So what is the alternative method of issuance that you are talking here? Like how does a collective of individuals reclaim the supply of money?
Well, one thing I just want to establish that it just seems to me every time I hear Austrians talking about monetary stuff, it seems like to them it's absolutely impossible. Like they don't even discuss the idea that private monopolies do exist. But private monopolies is all we have. It's when Coke and Pepsi compete, it's two private monopolies. When Republicans and Democrats compete, it's a private monopoly.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Where I kind of branch off though is that I don't feel it's these monopolies that exist that are private enterprise. They're not truly private enterprise. That's where I kind of get frustrated with these entities, is because in my opinion, like Monsanto, you know what I mean? They receive massive subsidies and yet are still a private enterprise, but they would not be able to have or maintain the power that they have if it weren't for their relationship with government, like those subsidies and the kickbacks that they get, like the Monsanto Protection Act and all this craziness. So I think that in a free market, that if you are providing a service, your service is going to grow because it is something that is wanted by the people and that is delivered, efficiently. So that if you were to form a legitimate free market or a legitimate private monopoly, you would have effectively serviced a lot of people and actually earned it, as opposed to what we have as private monopolies now, which were really just mechanisms of fascism.
Well,
Oh, wow, I didn't realize. I'm
is
sorry.
the
We are right up
collusion of
against the break.
government
We're going to be
and
coming right back with this great
corporation.
conversation after the break.
They hate us for our freedoms, politicians.
Tired of living in a violent society? If every citizen was armed, no one would be dumb enough to shoot people. It's exactly the ethos our founding fathers had when they wrote the Constitution and then changed it, which is what makes it sacred now. Come mingle with safety-minded people like you at the Liberty City Gun Club. Our nation is still the world leader in one thing: armaments. Nothing says excitement like a night out with a small caliber semi-automatic weapon. Get social at the Liberty City Gun Club.
At Damari Nolo Outfitters, we view the outdoors as our home, not a harsh wilderness. Our gear is chosen for adventure, not just in our backyard, but in the vast expanse of our amazing planet. Damari Nolo Outfitters carries the essential gear and tools you will need to live the empowering mindset of self-reliance. Our products are chosen especially for their durability and quality, and are carefully tested by our staff and associates. Our promise to you is we never offer any item for sale we don't use ourselves, so we can offer only what we know to be the best. Our online store makes it simple to browse through our high-quality lines of clothing, knives, tools, load carry gear, and accessories. We are committed to offering you the best American-made equipment on the market, a promise you'll see as we continually add new products. For more information about our products and blog posts to help you learn more about self-reliance and equipment, please visit www.damarinolo.com. That's DOMARI-NOLO.com. Damari Nolo, chosen for survival and adventure.
In every age, a technology is created that upends the foundations of society. The wheel, the printing press, the internet. Now, in a world sliding into financial chaos, a new technology is changing the way monetary systems work around the world. It is called Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a new form of money, controlled not by banks, governments, or corporations, but through mutual commerce between free individuals. To learn more, visit weusecoins.com.
Hi, I'm Steve.
I'm Irene.
I'm Lisa.
My name is Tom.
I'm a graphic designer,
college freshman,
stay-at-home mom with a full-time job,
scholar on social policy, and a barista.
And I'm just like you.
I'm an Obama supporter.
I support President Obama.
But the president needs your help.
Our president can't launch into another war without you. And remember, we promise to support him no matter what.
Together, we can do it.
That's why we here at the Americans for Whatever Barack Obama Wants, Did You Know He's Friends with Jay-Z, have launched a Kickstarter campaign to fund World War III.
And America is dead-ass broke, so our goal is to raise $1.6 trillion on behalf of the U.S. government.
That's where you come in.
Even a small donation would make all the difference.
When I first saw the president speak in 2008, in a YouTube clip posted to my Facebook page, I knew he was going to be right all the time. So I support World War III and IV, and any moon war the president may want to start.
I mean, there is no way that he or the cabal of corporate interests, spy agencies, and shadow bankers that tell him what to do would ever mislead us. A $25 donation will get you a piece of rubble from a war-torn Middle Eastern country kissed by Senator Lindsey Graham.
A $100 donation gets you a day pass to leave your local refugee camp.
You'll probably end up in a refugee camp, but it'll have free Wi-Fi.
So please, help us reach our goal of $1.6 trillion so we can make World War III a reality. Why? Because Obama.
Because Obama.
Do you have a group or organization founded on the principles of personal liberty, health freedom, or accountable government? We invite you to check out Same Side Entertainment. Same Side is a source for activists and liberty organizations to connect with well-known leaders in today's growing movement for sustainable living, personal liberty, and sovereignty issues. Same Side has a variety of keynote speakers, debate panels, interactive web presentations, musicians, and liberty-based entertainment, as well as services for web design, graphic design, video, and photography. Same Side can help customize your event by connecting you to the best of the liberty and political world while staying within your budget. Get connected with leaders in the liberty movement like Tom Woods, Kevin Gutzman, Jack Hunter, Robert Scott Bell, Bob Murphy, Michael Scheuer, John Bush, Jordan Page, Tatiana Moroz, and many more. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and our website at www.samesideentertainment.com. Again, that's www.samesideentertainment.com. Same Side Entertainment, connecting you with the education and resources you need.
Thanks for listening to FPRN. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to start your own show with FPRN, advertise with us, or donate to the network or to your favorite shows, check out our website at www.fprnradio.com.
We're not trying to push financial reform because we begrudge success that's fairly earned. I mean, I do think at a certain point you've made enough money. At a certain point, you've made enough money.
So we are back live at the Big Plantation here with Wayne Walton, creator of Mountain Owl's alternative currency. And we were talking about private monopolies that exist right now under our system. But, Wayne, I wanted to put it out there, just so you know, I am not a Austrian. I'm more of a anarchist route, free market economics.
Okay, yeah, and I'm hoping, maybe somebody will call in that is. And I just think that we have to, in order to, this is a from my Marine Corps training, in order to achieve victory over your adversary, the Marine Corps say there's 4 things you need to do. And the first thing you need to do is identify the enemy. And if we identify the enemy as the government, we're given carte blanche for the banks to do anything they want. And again, I'm not pro-government. I support the non-aggression principle. So the point I'm trying to make is that's why I'm against usury. So earlier we were playing a game of pretend where we live under anarchy. There are no governments. And what I was trying to articulate is that under that arrangement, because we are required to use the money of the private monopolists in order to have a place to live, because, let's say, you're renting. If you're renting, whoever you're renting from is paying a mortgage. Well, they're paying a mortgage to some private bank because the private bankers own all the land. So therefore, you're going to have to go get a job that pays in the private monopoly currency because you need to be able to earn money in order to pay your private bank debt. Make sense?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Absolutely.
It's just basically a modern form of serfdom. Kind of like the title of our show here, The Big Plantation.
Yeah, well, it's a private plantation. I'm trying to be very specific, and that's why it's powerful to just imagine an anarchy system, and that's this is backed up by history. Prior to the Constitution, under the Articles of Confederation, the Revolutionary War was fought in order to free us. Franklin's quotes all said this, is that we were glad to pay some tax, but we wanted the Bank of England was requiring us to pay our taxes and all of our bills in gold and silver. The Bank of England was requiring that with the Currency Act of 1765. So the colonists, Ben Franklin and such, they were issuing a colonial script. That means the local organic community was issuing their own money in the form of paper, not a commodity. The colonies had no gold and silver. There's no gold and silver in Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Maine, Virginia. There's no gold and silver there. So as soon as you make your currency gold and silver, what did you do?
You just switch from one private monopoly to another.
You give up your sovereignty. Yeah. You give up your sovereignty because whoever controls the money, irrespective of what it is, if I own all the land where the coconut trees are, let's say we live on an island and I own the land around the beaches where all the coconut trees grow. If we make coconuts the money, who's going to control the society?
The people who pick the coconuts.
Right, exactly. It's really simple, So what was happening during the colonial period is the war was fought over the control of money, the sovereignty issue. Whoever issues the money, the Bank of England, who was the true sovereign of England, not the king, the real power behind the throne was the bank, just like private banks control our government now. They always pull a false flag in the idea is that they blame everything on government, the media and everything points all the fingers to the government, when in fact it's the bankers pulling the strings from behind the scenes. This has been going on for thousands of years. This is why Jesus flipped tables in the temple. So
chase people out with bullwhips.
Is that
go ahead,
this
Wayne.
idea of, even though there's no government, because you have this cartel over money, I would still be forced to go get a job. Maybe even I'd have to go to work at Monsanto. Maybe I'd have to go work for TSA. Even though there's no government, I would have to go sell my soul to work at some shitty-ass place, just like right now, because I'd have to go earn that scarce money issued by these private cartels, so that I can pay my rent, so that my landlord could pay his mortgage to the same private bankers that run the show right now.
All right, so we've talked a lot about the theory. So what separates the idea of mountain hours, and how is it distributed?
All right, so it's a sovereignty issue. If we make the coconuts the money, that means whoever controls the coconuts, we're all using a barter system based upon coconuts, even though only a very few of us have coconut trees. With mountain hours or any self-issued money, what would happen is you, Michael Hayes, you can issue money right now in the form of a gift certificate. And your gift certificate could be for 1 hour advertising for your radio show. So it's a private contract by a producer, because you're producing a quality product. Because to be honest with you, like the topic that we're talking about right now never gets discussed on Alex Jones's show.
It doesn't get talked about
in my
much of
eyes,
anywhere.
You're producing a far better product than Alex Jones does.
Well, thank you. But I think we have a caller. If you could bring him in.
Yeah, the caller was Keith. I believe he had a question for Wayne, right?
Well, no, actually, I'm right on board with most of what he's saying. I mean, everybody's got a little bit of disagreement. I just wanted to correct him on that Jefferson quote. Thomas Jefferson never said a quote about inflation and deflation. So I just wanted to correct that, because I don't want any listeners out there to think that quote was real.
Well, let's Wayne Walton saying that then. Let's forget Thomas Jefferson, and I'm going to make that a universal truth. If we allow private bankers to issue the public currency, first through inflation, then deflation, we will wake up homeless on the continent that our forefathers conquered. So Jefferson didn't say it. The sole power of Wayne Walton said it, because it's a universal truth.
Hey, I love that answer. But hey, I'm right on board with you. Usury, and it's been going on for thousands of years. It goes way back. It predates the Constitution, and they had some checks and balances in there. In the Articles of Confederation, and that's why they wanted to, do away with that and bring it all together. So, great show.
Well,
thanks for having me on, guys.
Well, excellent point there is what I'm glad you brought me back to my point about the Constitution. The Constitution was written by private bankers in order to require a currency that was controlled by the European bankers. Prior to that, we were operating under the Articles of Confederation, which had next to no power. It was a very close system of anarchy. It was nearly anarchy under that system. And what happened then is you guys are broadcasting out of Philadelphia. Getting to the Bible, the idea of liberty is liberty from the money power. the struggle for humanity has always been between the people, or the debt slaves, and the sovereign, the individual money power. The money power itself is a private monopoly that has existed for thousands of years, long before governments were invented, long before the Federal Reserve. It is a private entity that it exists entirely in and of itself, and that private money power controlled monarchs, it controlled and it created governments. And the reason that it created governments, and the historic example of this, is during the period after the war, we revolted from the money power, the European money power, and we wanted to issue money ourselves. Well, the people started doing that, but still the private bankers were still requiring their gold and silver money. And the way this came to a head is, again, on the Liberty Bell, the reason why people rebelled, the scripture from Leviticus 25:10 is written on the Liberty Bell for a universal debt jubilee from the Bible. Debt jubilees existed prior to even Judaism and the Bible. During ancient Sumeria and Egypt, they had these debt jubilees because when money is issued by this private entity called usury or mammon or the den of thieves, which Jesus called it, the debts would grow exponentially and they'd become unpayable. And as you can't pay your debts, you would get foreclosed upon by the private bankers, and they would slowly acquire all the land just like they have right now. And that's why the Americans, the colonists, revolted under the scarce usury and gold and silver money system. They fought for a debt jubilee. They fought their war, and the war was over. They had the Articles of Confederation. The Brits went away, and they were expecting that they're going to have a debt jubilee. They thought they're going to also be able to pay their debts with their own local currency, but the private bankers who owned the land were still using gold and silver money, and the veterans from the war started this revolution called Shays' Rebellion in western Massachusetts. So the money power was based out of Boston, and this revolt came up. Now, at the time, there was next to no government, and what happened is the Shays and these other Revolutionary War veterans, they went into the courthouses and they blocked all the foreclosures. They said, we're not going to let the private bankers steal our land anymore. We're just not going to let it happen. The local sheriffs were paid in gold and silver, so there was a conflict between the local sheriffs who were beholden to the private bankers in Boston, and they said, hey, the sheriff's like, hey, I can't do anything. That's just me. So they started a private army out of Boston to go put down this insurrection in western Massachusetts.
Yeah, and
have you heard any of this stuff before?
I'm sorry?
I mean, I know this is a little bit of news to me, a little bit of history. I always like learning something new. But for our audience, can you just kind of clarify on what is a debt jubilee?
A debt jubilee means four things. A jubilee means, number one, it's the forgiveness of debt, for everybody's debts. Two, it's the forgiveness or the return of lands to their original owner. Three, it's the release of captives from jail. And then four, they allow the land to stand fallow, as they call it, because right now we're, the land is being taxed really heavily right now, because what usury does is it takes all of the human beings and the land and just taxes them really hard so that we become exhausted. So it's a reset where you're reset under a new set of rules because you understand that the existing rules aren't serving the common man.
Yeah, and what you just did that is really nice is you really clarified a very simplistic way of why everything, because people think of all of this as so intricately woven, and it's why so many people reject the sentiment that there are people behind the scenes that are in control of the money powers that have been directing history for a very, very long time. And it just shows that, like, you really only need that one keystone, and the keystone has been for centuries the money powers. The money powers are the thing that guide most items through history. They're the ones that start the wars, that end the wars, that fund the wars. And it's just it's just a really clarifying way of putting everything. Evil just all coalesce to one central thing because they all want that greed, the money, and that's where it comes from.
Exactly, and this has been the struggle. The human struggle for thousands of years has been between the sovereign money power and the common man, or the debt slaves. And that sovereign money power is called mammon, usury, or the den of thieves. So a lot of people that that come from the Austrian school, actually it's from all factions. If you're to take any of the dominant revolutions that we have right now, if it's the Tea Party, Occupy, or Ron Paul movements, none of those movements specifically articulate the precise enemy, the sovereign enemy. Therefore, I say each of those revolutions is loyal opposition, including the Ron Paul revolution.
Well, let's because we're coming up towards the close of the show. I'd really like to talk with you about solutions. I mean, obviously you've had a lot of headway where you're from. How did you get to the point where you are with Mountain Hours?
Just by studying is that it just makes sense. Is that if you issue the money, if you, regardless of what your skill set and what you can produce, if the common man issues the money, it makes you a sovereign without subject, provided that you can sustain life off of the currency that you issue. That's why it's essential that in order for us to have true emancipation, we have to go through the only true revolution that's ever occurred from the money power is something called the usury-free Jubilee.com, which is my website that I teach about this. It's usury-free-jubilee.com, and it's Bible-based economics, not the phony Christianity garbage that they teach, because I always like to say that usury usurps the original intention and then replaces it with a violent counterfeit. So usury, the bankers or the private money power, they usurped Judaism and they replaced it with a violent counterfeit. It's identity theft, the same way that the private bankers or usury stole the identity of Islam and they created this violent faction, and with their controlled private media, they promote these violent Muslims and that they're the enemy, or the violent Vietnamese or whatever, you know what I mean? Whoever the boogeyman of the day is, so that they could divide and conquer humanity.
Yeah, it's definitely the MO that we see going forward. With soon, it's going to be us. We're the enemy. Anybody who talks about any kind of freedom at all is going to be the enemy here. That's what seems to be the whole war on terror turning into the war on domestic terror type thing. But like Jamie said, we're coming to the end of the show. I'd really like you to elaborate more on the practical use of Mountain Hours and how it's issued and how you got it started and things like that. We got about 7 minutes.
Well, the whole idea is that barter costs nothing to use. Barter is like free energy. I always like to use this analogy. 100 years ago, there was a debate between using Tesla's free energy or I can't think of his name right now. But anyway, the point
Edison.
is the private monopolist won, just like Rockefeller says, who's a private banker. Before that, he's a private oil man. These private entities exist, and he says competition is a sin. And he had they started as a pay-as-you-go utility system. That's the kind of electricity that we use today. You have to pay a fee in order to get your utility, even though there's free energy all around us. In the same way, there's a free monetary system just like barter, and that's called barter script or self-issued credit. It's an IOU that you issue, just like a restaurant owner does when they issue a gift certificate, or a grocery store issues when they issue a coupon. There's not a big complaint where people are complaining about, hey, there's too many restaurant gift certificates, or there's too many grocery store coupons, or there's too many frequent flyer miles issued by the airlines. Nobody's complaining about those sort of IOU self-issued currencies, right? In the same way, we can issue currencies in order to be sovereigns without subjects, and by doing so, we're taking advantage of a free monetary system.
I mean, when you put it that way, it just sounds so simple, It just sounds so. I don't know why it would be. It's almost hard for me to wrap my head around it. It's so simple.
Well, that's because we've been lied to so much. This is the stuff that I can't get on Alex Jones's show. He had a. This was something we were talking about on Facebook. Is I wanted to expose Alex Jones as being a loyal opposition. Roughly about 2 months ago, he had a video competition that was for like $115,000, and Mountain Hours submitted 12 videos to that. 12 videos. And Alex Jones had an entire video library. He called it a virtual video movie show or whatever. He didn't post. I'm not saying that we didn't win it. I'm not complaining about not winning it. But he didn't post our videos at all. And there's another guy named John Turmel, who's also a usury monetarist, a usury-free Jubilee monetarist, and he submitted a video on this exact same topic, and his video got censored by Jones as well. And the next aspect of all this is the usury itself is contract fraud, because if I loan you 10 silver dollars and make you pay back 11, within that system, if I loan out, say, 10 people under that same system, now you have 100 silver dollars circulating. How do they pay me back 110 when they didn't have the 100 in the first place? So it's a method where you have contract fraud, where it's mathematically certain that you're going to have some people default, and when they default, the private banker seize their land. That's another issue that is, whether you believe in the Bible or not believe in the Bible, usury is a mathematic certainty that you're guaranteed to have people default under that system.
Absolutely, and that's what they want. They want us fighting with each other over, not being part of that mathematical certainty and distracting us with other things instead of focusing on the real enemy here. But we're coming up to the end of the show. We've got 2 minutes here. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything else you would like to plug?
Well, it's that go to my site. It's usuryfreejubilee.com. This has always been the genuine revolution where the have-nots rise up. They issue their own money, and through the Jubilee, the land is restored to the original owners, meaning us and not the private bankers. And it's essential that we have abundant money to do that, not scarce money. We need to have more money than the bad guys, because we want to have more money so that we can recruit more people to our cause. It unites the left and the right. Everything, all of the social programs that are currently implemented right now for the left, we can support those on the left without the violence of taxation. So we can support those through the money system, recruit, unite the left and the right, and then the big part of this is in our local counties is to hire the sheriff to work for the people, and then the sheriff will block all foreclosures, all contracts that are based upon force and fraud, block all taxes, income and property taxes. And what that does is once the people hire their own enforcer, meaning the Jubilee sheriff, that only then will sovereignty be returned to the people, because that Jubilee sheriff is paid in the people's currency rather than the private monopolist's currency.
All right, well, Wayne Walton, I always feel like I learn a lot every time I talk to you, but that's the end of our show. We'll have to have you on again sometime soon. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We'll be back next week live with The Big Plantation. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to FPRN. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to start your own show with FPRN, advertise with us, or donate to the network or to your favorite shows, check out our website at www.fprnradio.com.